Hello, and welcome back to Ballistic Beacon. Tensions across the Middle East have reached a critical stage as Israel and Iran engage in a series of direct and highly coordinated military strikes, marking one of the most dangerous escalations between the two nations in recent years. What began as a limited Israeli air operation has now evolved into a broader regional confrontation, with Tehran demonstrating an unexpected level of precision and retaliation capability. Over the past 72 hours, Israeli fighter aircraft carried out multiple airstrikes targeting Iranian military infrastructure in Syria, western Iraq, and suspected Iranian drone command sites near Isfahan. The strikes were intended to cripple Iran's logistical routes and disrupt the flow of weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon. However, within hours, Iran launched a retaliatory campaign that caught Israel by surprise both in scale and effectiveness. According to military intelligence sources, Iran deployed a combination of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and long-range drones aimed at strategic Israeli defense assets, including radar systems, communication nodes, and early warning facilities. Several reports confirm that some of these Iranian missiles penetrated Israel's layered defense network, causing operational disruptions in key southern regions. The Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF, have confirmed that at least 3 military installations sustained significant damage. Among them was an airbase in the Negev Desert, believed to house F-35 I-Adir stealth fighters. Preliminary assessments suggest that several aircraft maintenance hangars and fuel storage units were hit, temporarily reducing the base's operational readiness. Defense analysts note that this represents one of the rare occasions where Iranian missiles have managed to inflict tangible damage within Israeli territory. It highlights a serious vulnerability in Israel's air defense matrix, despite its reliance on advanced systems such as the Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow 3 interceptors. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRG, described the retaliation as a measured defensive response to what it termed Zionist aggression. Iranian state media claimed the attacks demonstrated the country's deterrence capacity and its readiness to respond to any future Israeli incursions. While Tehran stopped short of declaring the operation complete, its tone suggests that further responses may be conditional on Israel's next move. On the Israeli side, officials have vowed to respond decisively. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who convened an emergency meeting of the Security Cabinet, followed by a briefing from the IDF Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi. In a televised statement, Netanyahu stated that Israel will not tolerate missile fire on its territory and will continue to neutralize threats wherever they originate. However, internal assessments within Israeli defense circles reveal growing concern. Reports suggest that Iranian missiles used in the latest wave were far more sophisticated than anticipated. Many were variants of the Fateh 110 and Kabar Shekin series, equipped with terminal guidance systems and low radar signatures, making them harder to intercept. Satellite imagery analyzed by Western intelligence agencies indicates that Iran launched many of these projectiles from mobile platforms deep inside its territory, complicating any Israeli counter-strike options. Israeli analysts now fear that the combination of mobility, range, and precision gives Tehran a temporary tactical advantage. Adding to Israel's strategic dilemma is the growing involvement of Iranian-aligned militias. Hezbollah units in southern Lebanon have stepped up rocket launches along the northern Israeli border, forcing the evacuation of several border towns. Meanwhile, pro-Iranian militias in Iraq have claimed responsibility for drone attacks targeting Israeli-linked logistical hubs in the Red Sea corridor. This multi-front pressure has stretched the IDF operational bandwidth, with forces deployed simultaneously in Gaza, the West Bank, and along the Lebanese frontier. Maintaining readiness for a sustained exchange with Iran poses an increasing challenge. Defense commentators warn that Israel may be approaching the limits of its simultaneous engagement capacity. The United States has expressed concern over the escalation, urging both sides to exercise restraint. However, Washington has also deployed additional naval assets to the eastern Mediterranean, including an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer equipped with Aegis missile defense systems. The move is widely interpreted as both a deterrence signal to Iran and a reassurance to Israel. European allies have called for de-escalation through diplomatic channels, though few expect Tehran or Jerusalem to stand down immediately. Iran's leadership, buoyed by domestic support and regional alliances, views the confrontation as an opportunity to redefine deterrence dynamics in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Israeli intelligence continues to assess the full scale of Iranian damage capability. Early estimates suggest that Iran's ballistic missile infrastructure remains largely intact, despite several reported Israeli cyber operations aimed at disabling launch networks. Sources indicate that Israel conducted electronic warfare operations targeting Iranian radar and communication grids prior to the initial airstrikes, but their overall effectiveness remains uncertain. Military analysts from the Royal United Services Institute in London suggest that this exchange marks a turning point in the Israel-Iran shadow conflict. For years, Israel has operated with relative freedom in striking Iranian assets across the region, often with little retaliation. Iran's latest action, however, demonstrates a significant improvement in both missile precision and operational coordination. This shift raises major questions about the future of Israeli deterrence strategy. The assumption that Iran would avoid direct confrontation due to fear of Israeli or U.S. retaliation may no longer hold true. The IRGC's confidence in launching strikes directly at Israeli territory suggests that Tehran believes its missile shield and strategic alliances are strong enough to withstand a counter-response. Another element adding complexity to the situation is cyber warfare. Multiple Israeli government networks experienced temporary outages shortly after the Iranian missile barrage. Cybersecurity officials have not publicly confirmed Iranian involvement, but independent cybersecurity groups believe the attacks were synchronized with the kinetic strikes, pointing to a coordinated hybrid offensive. In parallel, Israel's own retaliatory cyber operations have reportedly targeted Iranian oil export databases, causing disruptions in shipment tracking and refinery management systems. This digital tit-for-tat adds a new layer to the evolving military landscape. Intelligence analysts in Tel Aviv and Washington are now evaluating whether Iran's new missiles incorporate Russian or Chinese technological assistance. While Moscow officially denies any direct military support, defense experts point to design similarities between Iranian hypersonic prototypes and Russia's Iskander and Kinjal systems. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine may also be influencing this exchange, with Iran possibly adapting lessons from Russia's long-range strike operations. On the operational front, Israel has increased combat air patrols over its northern and eastern sectors. F-35I and F-16I squadrons have been conducting around-the-clock sorties, supported by airborne early warning aircraft and refueling tankers. Civilian airspace over large portions of Israel remains restricted, and multiple airports are operating under emergency security protocols. The Israeli Navy has also heightened its alert status in the Mediterranean and Red Sea, anticipating potential strikes from Iran-backed groups using maritime drones or anti-ship missiles. In response, Iran has reportedly deployed several of its own naval units, including fast attack craft and submarines, in the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman. The regional implications of this escalation are significant. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, both maintaining cautious relations with Israel and dialogue with Iran, have quietly increased their air defense readiness. Qatar has offered to mediate, though neither Tehran nor Jerusalem has signaled interest in external negotiation. International observers warn that continued strikes could destabilize vital shipping routes and energy markets. The Strait of Hormuz, through which nearly 20% of global oil supply passes, remains a critical flashpoint. Any disruption there could have serious economic repercussions far beyond the Middle East. Domestically, both Israel and Iran are leveraging the situation for political messaging. In Israel, opposition leaders have questioned whether the intelligence community underestimated Iran's technological progress. In Tehran, state television has portrayed the strikes as a victory for the axis of resistance, reinforcing the narrative of regional defiance against Western and Israeli pressure. From a strategic standpoint, Israel's next steps will determine whether this escalation stabilizes or spirals further. Analysts suggest three possible scenarios. First, Israel could intensify its air campaign, targeting deeper inside Iranian territory to restore deterrence credibility. This option, however, risks triggering a wider regional conflict and drawing in U.S. forces. Second, Israel may opt for limited strikes focused on proxy networks, Hezbollah, Iraqi militias, and Syrian bases, thereby reducing direct confrontation with Iran while maintaining military pressure. Third, under international pressure, both sides could enter a temporary stand-down, possibly through back-channel diplomacy mediated by Gulf or European intermediaries. At present, indications point towards continued low-intensity exchanges rather than a full-scale war. Yet, both militaries remain on high alert. The IDF has activated reserve units, and Iran's Revolutionary Guard maintains elevated readiness across missile bases in Khuzestan and Kermanshah provinces. Satellite reconnaissance from Western defense agencies confirms ongoing mobilization. Fuel convoys, missile transporter erector launchers, and radar units have been repositioned across Iran's western corridors. Likewise, Israel's Home Front Command has expanded its civil defense advisories, urging citizens to prepare for possible further missile alerts. As the situation evolves, the broader geopolitical consequences cannot be ignored. The confrontation underscores the collapse of previous deterrence norms and the increasing role of precision missile warfare in regional strategy. It also places additional strain on U.S. diplomatic efforts to contain escalation while balancing commitments in Europe and the Indo-Pacific. For now, both sides appear to be calibrating their actions carefully, avoiding all-out escalation but signaling strength to their domestic and regional audiences. The balance between deterrence and provocation has rarely been more fragile. This exchange may well redefine the future of Middle Eastern warfare, shifting from covert proxy conflicts to direct, technologically advanced engagements between states. The lessons from this confrontation will influence not only Israeli and Iranian strategy, but also the military doctrines of every regional power watching closely. As the situation remains fluid, Ballistic Beacon will continue to monitor verified intelligence, military assessments, and diplomatic developments from across the region. You're watching Ballistic Beacon delivering precise and verified defense updates from the world's most volatile regions.